Frost, and welcome to another Chatterfox review. And today we're going to be talking about a wonderful little movie that has been a furry favorite for decades and has playfully been called Hamlet with Lions. And if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm talking about The Lion King, a story of love, betrayal, murder, and revenge, all rolled into an adorably fuzzy film about a pride of lions and their pride lands. And to let you guys know right away, we're going to be focusing on the 2019 remake today, not the original, but I will be commenting on both to some degree, since there are noticeable differences. But first, let's talk about the cast, since there are a few of them and they range in personalities and even species. We'll start with the protagonists and the supporting characters, since they make up a majority of the cast, but there is a lot to say about the antagonists in this one as well. First up, there's Mufasa, voiced by James Earl Jones, who is the original king of the Pride Lands and one of the characters that the furry fandom pretty universally considers to be daddy material. Mufasa is portrayed as a benevolent king, a proud father, and a strong believer in the circle of life, an almost religious belief that everything in the world exists in a delicate balance. It's hinted that he actually beat his brother in a challenge of sorts before the beginning of the movie, which suggests that the events that led to his death weren't the first time his brother had betrayed him. He's also mated to our next character, Sarabi, voiced by Alfre Woodard, and I'm sorry if I messed that name up. Sarabi is the Queen of Pride Rock, and she takes great pride, no pun intended, in her role. While she doesn't have much presence in the movie, what little we do see of her emphasizes her love for her family and her utter disdain for the movie's main antagonist. Next up is the main protagonist of the movie, Simba, voiced by DJ McCreary as a cub and Donald Glover as an adult. Simba is the son of Mufasa and Sarabi and is Prince of the Pride Lands. After the death of his father at the hands of his uncle, Simba finds himself in exile, where he actually spends the majority of his life, right up until he's given a reason to return home. Though he is seen throughout the movie to be a rather brave individual, he is also more than a little brash, which leads to a good majority of the actual drama in the movie, from his exploration of an elephant graveyard to his reluctance to take his place as the rightful king of Pride Rock. Next up we have Zazu, voiced by John Oliver. Zazu is a member of Mufasa's royal court, an advisor to the king, and a sort of guardian to Simba when he's a cub. He's a hornbill tasked with informing the king of the goings-on in the kingdom, and while he may have some cute one-liners or clever quips, he only ever really plays a small part in the storyline. His attitude also drives me a little fluffing mental too, since he comes off as always looking down on others. Though he does take great pride in what he does, and he genuinely seems to care about his duties and the well-being of the Pride Lands. Up next we have Nala, voiced by Shahadi Wright Jones as a cub and Beyonce as an adult. She is the main love interest for Simba in the movie, as well as his best friend from a very young age. Nala is a powerful young lioness who is willing to stick by Simba's side through some of his worst mishaps. Not only does she have the attitude needed to keep the young prince in line, but she is shown to have the skill to put him in his place too, if need be. She even eventually rebels against the main antagonist, leaves the Pride Lands in search of help, and ends up finding Simba. And after a heartfelt reunion and some tumble snuggles, she eventually convinces him to return to the Pride Lands and retake his kingdom, with a little help from our next character, Rafiki. Voiced by John Connie, Rafiki is the Pride Lands Mejusi, or baboon mystic. He is not seen much through the first movie, but when he is seen, it's often a powerful moment. The mysterious monkey is there at Simba's coronation and is seen to keep a record of the royal lineage at the tree he calls home. Most notable, though, is his connection to the spiritual world, and his role in helping convince Simba to retake his kingdom by letting him converse with his deceased father. His character winds up being fleshed out a lot more in the future movies and even TV series and books, but for now we're only focusing on the first movie. Last but certainly not least are the famous duo Timon the Meerkat and Pumbaa the Warthog, voiced by Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen respectively. These two are a clever pair who initially find the exiled and exhausted Simba shortly after the death of his father and teach him their personal philosophy of Hakuna Matata, which means no worries. These two practically raise Simba during his exile, teaching him a new way to survive by consuming insects and about their carefree outlook on life, and become two of his closest friends. They also play an interesting role in helping him take his place as king, all while sharing some of the quirkiest moments in the movie. They're quite obviously meant to be the comic reliefs, but their wacky antics make them two of the most memorable characters and even netted them their own spin-off movie. Now we can move on to our antagonists, and there are really only two of them worth mentioning in my opinion. We'll start with Scar, voiced by Chiwetel Ejiofor. I know I fluffed up that name and I kind of want to apologize. Anyways, Scar is the main antagonist and Mufasa's younger brother. As with most monarchies, it's the older brother who is destined to rule, and like in most stories like this, that hierarchy has left Scar a very bitter individual. He's seen as a conniving and deceitful villain, treating his brother and the rest of his family with disdain. His hatred for his brother even leads him to commit murder with the aid of the outland hyenas so he could take the throne by force. When in power, he allows the hyenas to hunt and kill as they please, ignoring the circle of life and eventually leading the Pride Lands to ruin. Now, last but certainly not least in the villains category is Shenzi, voiced by Florence Kasumba, who is the matron of the outland hyenas and the one who leads her people to join Scar in his attempt to take over the Pride Lands. She's also the one who eventually gives the order to kill Scar. Now, as a character, Shenzi was one of the three goofy hyenas in the 1994 version of the movie, and she seemed to be on about the same level socially as her two friends. In the 2019 version, though, they made her more of a royal in her own right, which, given how hyenas are in the real world, makes a lot more sense than just making her another henchman. And now that we've talked about the cast, we can move on to the plot, which is actually fairly easy to explain. It is, after all, a movie that is almost 20 years old. A benevolent king is betrayed by a spiteful younger brother who assumes the throne, exiles the young prince, and leads the kingdom to ruin, only to have the young prince eventually return to assume the throne and return his kingdom to prosperity. This is the general synopsis for both the 1994 and the 2019 versions of the movie, and it makes for an exciting story. What I would rather talk about at this point, though, are the differences between the two versions and my thoughts on the major criticism that the 2019 version got. Now, I will say that I have a gripe about some of the changes, such as how they pretty much ruined one of my favorite songs in the original movie, Be Prepared. But I also have to admit that, for the overall feel it seems like they were going for, the changes that were made felt like they belonged. A lot of people have criticized the 2019 release as being cold or soulless in comparison to the original, and if you look at it assuming that the remake was going for the same feel or was aimed at the same audience, then they'd be kind of right. But I personally don't think that's the case. You see, I don't believe the live-action version was intended to capture the same cartoony drama that the 1994 release captured, mostly because I believed it was aimed at a different audience. Disney has grown up with its audience in a lot of ways over the generations, and while they are still making cute cartoon movies for the younger generations, I believe this version of The Lion King was aimed at giving a more adult feel to the story entirely, because a lot of the people who would have grown up watching the original are adults now. I honestly love both versions of this movie for what they are. I love the cute and cartoony feel of the 1994 release because it's fun to watch, and with the animation style and the wacky characters, it can be easy to overlook that it's meant to be a heartbreaking story of betrayal. I love the 2019 release too because it lets a more somber feel shine through, and while it does bring some of the quirkiness of its predecessor to the forefront with its characters, it portrays the much darker realities of the story in a remarkably beautiful way. That's why I'm giving it 9 out of 10 paws, because even if it wasn't a scene-for-scene remake of the toony little tale that everyone expected it to be, it's an amazing movie that brings a much darker, much more real feel to a beloved Disney classic. That's it for now though. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time though, bye!
Oh yeah, I want to show our patrons some love too because they're awesome. Their contributions help us to afford all the neat stuff we use to record. So thank you. And if you want to become a patron too, you can click the link down in the description. You'd really be helping the channel out, and you'd get a couple nifty goodies too. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, then yay! You're amazing. By the way, subscribe! Please don't make a foxy beg.